Hey now, everybody. Welcome to episode 200 of the Take Aim Outdoor podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Brayden Hammonds, and couldn't be more happy to get number 200 out to everybody. This week, I have Chris Derrick on from Sitka Gear. Chris is the Whitetail brand manager that specializes just on the whitetail side for the products for Sitka Gear. And as we all know, Sitka Gear is known for basically bringing technical garments to the market. And that's pretty much what we talk about in this episode is all the technical aspect of the whitetail side. And hope you guys enjoy number 200. All right, everybody, we are live, brand new Take Aim podcast, and always excited to get a new show out, and always excited to talk with great people and about good gear, and super excited to talk to Chris Derrick from Sitka Gear, the Whitetail brand manager, and talk about just some of the stuff Sitka's got going on and the whitetail side of stuff. So, Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Not a problem, man. Super excited to talk to you and just kind of get into a little bit of what Sitka does and basically kind of how it's morphed into the whitetail side to what I would call now is probably some of the best product and clothing on the market for us whitetail bow hunters, even here in the Midwest.
Yeah, we like to put a lot of effort. We spend a lot of time in just doing in-field validation as well as in the lab validation, and that's something that's really important to us. We won't bring something out until we feel that it is right where we want it to be, and it's a big part of what we do. So we don't want anybody to have a bad experience, and we also spend a lot of time just trying to learn and advance the gear as we go.
Yeah, for sure. I know years ago, and I kind of mentioned this before the show, that it seemed like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like years ago when technical clothing kind of hit the market, and it's really only been, I don't know, what would you say, Chris, 10 years maybe? Maybe just
Correct.
Over that?
And yeah, our founder, Jonathan Hart, from the way I understand it, it was obviously before I was around, but, he was out in the field and they were doing some, mountain-style hunts, and they were having a pretty terrible experience because the gear was developed not for that type of pursuit. And so what he really took is the same approach that you'd see in mountain gear based brand and started to make sure that they were developing world-class and best-in-class product for those style of uses. If it's good for that style of use, then, and you refine it for the hunt-specific pursuit, then you've got everything you need.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, I kind of remember Sitka, specializing in mountain gear, and now it's morphed to being categorized, and now you guys have this awesome, whitetail side. And when about did you guys get into the whitetail side of the market?
It's been about, I think it's been about 6 years that Sitka really started to make a push, but it was around 2015. That's when Elevated 2 took off, and I think that has really a lot of people have been drawn to what the group did at that point and developing really great products. When I look at the whitetail pursuit, everything we're doing is, you might have a short period of exertion, and then followed by, really long stationary sits. And so you were talking about from just the mountain sports application and how you're managing moisture in both applications is really important. Because if you get sweated up and then you go to sit still, that's a miserable experience, and nobody wants to be put in that situation. So that's how the approach we take. And just to give everybody some context in the way that we're set up is we approach each of the hunt-specific categories. So we have somebody that's in charge for fit-for-use applications for waterfowl. For example, Jim Saubier, all he works on is waterfowl-specific product. John Barklow works on the big game side. So that's going to be elk, mule deer, pronghorn, moose hunts up in Alaska or BC. And then my role inside the company is just working specifically on whitetail products. So anything that's specific, fit for use for hunting whitetails is what I spend my days working on.
Well, that's cool. Well, if you could, Chris, take us behind the curtain, so to speak. You guys have had, basically, I think a lot of people would recognize like the Fanatic line, and now you guys have an early season line. But let's go back to the kind of the origins and kind of your role and how you, just like I said, behind the curtain, so to speak, how you guys have, changed that stuff from maybe different threads to just removing some bulk and just some of the technical aspects to make it actually, when I've learned about Sitka, you guys have, or the whitetail side now, you guys have really kind of morphed into very well thought out process to all this gear. And just, I think it's kind of amazing to kind of get maybe, like I said, behind the scenes, look at how you guys do that, because everything is so well thought out from where, which jacket is it, Chris, just to give an example, the new one you guys have where, is it the Fanatic, the new Fanatic with the safety harness that you don't have to take the coat completely off to get that through?
Yeah. So that is the new Fanatic. It'll be out in summer of 2019, obviously right before hunting season. But a lot of people have seen it at the ATA trade show, for example. And that's a product that's really designed for ultra cold weather conditions. So you're looking, freezing temperatures to sub-zero, negative 20 degree, type temperatures if you're hunting up where you are, or in Canada. You guys just got done with your wonderful polar vortex, so that would be the suit for those days. And with what you were referring to, the Constant Connect safety harness port, one of the things, when we looked at the old Fanatic, it was really, everyone was like, how can you make that even better? But we try and never sit with where we're at. So the whole approach for that product is trying to figure out how do we take it from where it is as a really good, great product of what it is for keeping you warm in those ultra cold weather conditions. But then how can we learn from what we've had some years in experience with it? We've listened to people that have talked about using it, and there's always some things that we can do to make things better. And one of them specifically that you talked about there was the Constant Connect safety harness port. So technically the right way, if you're tethered into a safety harness when you're up in a tree, is to take your lineman's rope, if you've climbed up your sticks, throw that around the tree, disconnect from the tree tether from where it's attached to the tree, run that through the harness port. And the reason you'll see the harness port in all of our jackets is otherwise your hood will interfere with it, or let's say it's just sitting up against your neck, which can be really uncomfortable. And then with the new Constant Connect, essentially just imagine the back of the collar being able to break apart. And there's a slide to lock snap on there. So if you're putting on or pulling off the jacket, the snap won't just pop off. So you're gonna slide it horizontally to release the snap, and it opens up. And there's some magnets that hold the closure shut. You can take off the jacket without ever disconnecting from the tree stand and going through that whole process. Because one thing you want to never do, I'm sure we've all heard horror stories of people that are falling out of a tree stand, and that was a really big safety concern, was just making sure that that's done the right way. And then also there's just a speed aspect of it. You want to be moving as little as possible. So the more time you're moving around, taking on and off a jacket, they always seem to show up right when you least expect them. So they definitely can cue in on movement, and that was one of the reasons behind that update on the Constant Connect safety harness port.
Yeah, it's a really awesome feature for any stand bow hunter. One thing to kind of get back to my original lengthy question there, Chris, is where do you guys kind of get that feedback from and to come up with a design like that to make a jacket that was really good even better? Is it from in the field use, from, guys that are hunting all the time, or just design?
Yeah, I would say it's from three areas. First one is we have a team of what we call, there's about mid-40s, 47 or so whitetail, what we call ambassadors or SWAT team. Those are in-use field users that I'll send product out to. They spend a lot of time hunting. They're from anywhere from Michigan to PA to Louisiana to Florida, and over in through the Midwest states, so they can give you really balanced opinions. They're people that I trust to be able to give feedback. So I would say that would be the group that we have that I've got a direct line of contact. The other is just through customer service here. Obviously, I'm speaking to our customer service team all the time. People also, just like I might be having a conversation with you, for example, and you might be able to point me in the direction on an update or a suggestion. I file that away. I look for common threads. And then the last one is in field. I go out and I spend time hunting in this product. I don't think there's a substitute for that. And so I'll make sure that I spend time in the tree stand. I always kind of say I'm kind of a rolling mess in the tree stand because I'm always trying new things. So a lot of times I'll be playing around, maybe doing a new pack, and then I've left something in the last pack I was testing that morning. So those are things that I try and do, is put myself in the different situations and then just try and hunt with some various different people to watch how they're engaging with the product as well to be able to make it a lot better than what it currently is.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome feedback. I mean, especially to hear you guys, you mentioned the, listening and talking to customer service, because that's probably something we take for granted as a user is that feedback to you guys. And it's probably pretty important, and it's probably something we never think of, but you guys probably use that feedback probably quite a bit, way more than I would ever think.
Yeah, I enjoy talking to them. And the one thing I've noticed from, the Sitka side, I mean, it is the really best customer service team I've actually ever seen. In order to be in that department, you actually have to hunt. So everybody inside of there actually cares about the product and actually uses it in the field. And so I think that's something that, if you call into customer service or you reach out to them, that they will help you solve your problem. They will do the best that they can. So I have a lot of respect for that team inside of our company. Yeah,
for sure. So let's stick with the Fanatic series for a minute, Chris. What else are we looking for in that jacket as an outwear? I know you said it's basically your heavier version, your cold version, I would call it. So colder temps. What kind of fabric is the outside? Is it like the tight nap stuff? Is it very waterproof or noisy, not noisy? I know you guys made improvements even down to the zippers, which I think is amazing and you could talk about, but just describe some of obviously the sound is super important to us bow hunters.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Fanatic system includes the Fanatic hoodie, the Fanatic glove, and then new updated this year is the Fanatic jacket. There's a vest as well. There's a bib, and then there's also what's called the Fanatic pack. And each of those items that are new and updated this year are really developed around advancing the science of sound. So a lot of the features that are inside here, not to say that you couldn't use it for gun hunting, because it's great. All of these features advance those for anyone that's using a firearm in the field, but also just if you're at really close engagement distance, inside 40 yards, sound makes a huge difference. And, the way that deer hear makes a big difference. So what we did is we spent a lot of time analyzing how we could make that product quieter. So we wanted to maintain the fact that it's wind stopper. So it's not like a waterproof product. This is gear that's designed for stopping wind, cold environments. If you're looking for something that's cold, wet conditions, then you're going to look at something like the Incinerator, which is a Gore-Tex outer shell. It's rainproof. The Fanatic is all about warmth and quiet. So we use the new Jacquard Berber face. That Berber face actually, it's not a print. Each one of the threads that comes out of the Berber is its own color. So the black's the black, yarn, the white's a white yarn, for example. And so what that really does is improves the OptiFade print clarity on there, which is a big difference. And then also on the jacket, you're going to see a left and right fit design. So I don't know, how many of your listeners might be lefty archers, but the everything on that jacket is there's actually now a left-hander's version. So that way everything is ideally designed for if you're drawing a bow or you're shooting a firearm and you're left eye dominant. That's going to really make a big difference. And a lot of people ask why on the Fanatic, why it has that kind of a weird cross zip. So if just to describe this, you'll reach across the side and the zipper actually starts around the side of your left hip. We moved it a little bit further forward this year just to make it a little bit easier on people. But the reason that cross zip is there, it actually allows for a built-in hand muff. And if you reach your hands through and you can connect your hands, they're going to stay a lot warmer than if you just put them in a standard hand pocket. That's why we all like muffs in cold conditions versus just putting them in our hand pockets. And we also built inside of there, just like the little details you were talking about, there's a chemical hand warmer pocket. So one of the things that would happen in the field, if I was holding onto a chemical hand warmer in the muff in the old Fanatic, I might pull my hand out and sling that hand warmer to the ground, which either, totally stinks because now I don't have that artificial heat source. Second of all, a lot of times the reason I'm pulling my hand out of the muff is because I'm reaching for my bow to engage a deer, and that little bit of movement could really blow the whole thing for you. And then when we were talking about the left and right fit design with that cross zip, there's now a stow collar. So if you flip the collar open, it stows on a dedicated magnet hold point, and there's actually all OptiFade. So now the internal part of that jacket actually has the OptiFade on there as well. And then you'll see on like the grip arm for your if you're reaching out and grabbing your bow, there's no Berber on that side. But then on your draw arm or your trigger arm, if you're shooting like a muzzleloader or firearm, you're going to see no Berber right on the inside of the elbow, and that's really all about reducing bulk when you're at full draw or if you're holding your firearm. So those are some of the key differences. There's a rangefinder pocket, where you can store your rangefinder quick and easily, and with that hold-to-grunt tube as well. So that's really the updates to the jacket, if that makes sense. And then also with the way that we analyze the sound when we went through this, we partnered with a gentleman by the name of James Black. He works at Montana State University. He's what you would call an acoustical engineer. And this guy, he basically knows how sound works in environments. So if you want like a quieter office space or if you're at a concert venue, he's going to tell you how that sound engages in that environment. So he could tell us what's happening when we're moving in the tree stand. And then we partnered with Dr. Carl Miller, who's at the University of Georgia, and he's been studying whitetails for about 40 plus years. And he told us, and he helped provide us guidance on how deer are going to perceive that noise that we're making. So they shift about 2 octaves higher in frequency than our human hearing is. So when you're making a move, if you've ever moved a rain jacket, have you ever taken your sleeve of your rain jacket and you hear that popping sound?
Yep.
That's called buckle, and that happens at about 125 hertz. But then if you take your hand and just rub it on your sleeve, or you rub your sleeves together on your arms, that sound is called rustle, and it happens about 3,000 plus hertz. And that's the sound that's actually right in the sweet spot for deer hearing. The buckle actually is what we think is outside the deer hearing. And through all the analysis that we did, we went into the Gore Comfort Lab, which is a climate room. It can go down to negative 50 degrees. We took it down to negative 20 degrees Celsius. That's about negative 4 degrees Fahrenheit for those that are out there. And the reason we chose that number is the microphones quit working past that temperature. And we analyze the sound that you're going to be making while you're either drawing a bow, reaching for a rangefinder, or I'm sure you've frozen to a tree, for example, and that Velcro-y sound. you make with engaging at the tree, we analyze that noise as well.
Yeah, that is crazy. A lot of people don't know this about myself, but previously, my previous profession for 10 years, I worked in a wind tunnel that all we did was wind tunnel testing for sound. It was a soundproof tunnel, and everything was recorded, worked with audible engineers every day for cars, and I always was just curious, like, how in the world has that kind of technology not converted over to the hunting side at some point just for our clothing, just because it's one of their number one defenses is the sound and how well they hear, and so that's really cool that you guys are doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I actually would put sound on a higher than even scent, because there's so much question on what actually deer can, what actually works out there in the marketplace, and it's very hard to pinpoint the exact situation. But sound's something that you can control, and so I would even put it at a higher priority than scent.
Yeah, I would too, knowing what I know about the sound and how just all of those animals from elk to deer, they just hear so well, and it is just key that you can't move if you're really paying attention to a deer that maybe has already locked in on you. That's all they're doing. If the wind's not in their face, they are just trying to remotely hear a pin drop. So again, it's pretty neat that you guys are doing that. And Chris, how did you guys kind of come up with the side zipper design? I know you said it was for the hand muff, but did that cause problems for design, just being that it wasn't vertical and it bumping out or anything of that sort?
Well, one of the things we were concerned, so we did move to a new style of zipper, so we even went into, the sound chamber, for example, and started moving zippers up and down slow, trying to evaluate what sounds. So I'm sure you guys can all relate. Sometimes if you ever put on your jacket and you start zipping it up, you're like, can I ever actually get this zipper up? Because it just sounds so noisy with all the clicking of the teeth coming together. So we analyzed and found the quietest zipper that was available out there to us that has the durability we need. But that was one of the things, just with that angled zipper, we had to go through and validate whether or not that would work in the field. So always, as soon as you start angling zippers, weird things can happen. So getting that shaping down was exactly right. And then also, where's the head finish up on your face, for example, and then if you're stacking layers, you don't want a bunch of zippers right on top of each other. So we have to evaluate how that feels too for people. So those are some of the big.
Oh, sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, underneath that's part of the, Sitka's always been known as a system. So explain that a little bit from the design-wise, just how well thought out it is, that what you just mentioned is true, that even your base layer, I'll call them base layers, all of that stuff works as one, so you don't have any of that bunching in. Your medium fits really a medium, and you can order that in the same shirt and jacket, not be bulked up. And stuff like that, you guys have really done the best job on the clothing side than anybody out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I call it, there's really three parts to it. One is setting your foundation. That's actually the most critical. A lot of people don't realize this, but the reason, and you don't see cotton, for example, and in mountaineering sports, there's a reason for that. There's a saying that cotton kills. Well, when it gets wet, it doesn't add any insulating value. It actually makes you colder. And so setting your foundation is super important. So getting a good pair of base layers, I like to start with a lightweight synthetic or a lightweight wool base layer. If you're taking your Fanatic or your Stratus or whatever product you're using, and then you're wearing your blue jeans under it, and you start to get sweated up on your walk-in or when you're climbing in, you're going to have a bad experience. It'll probably be better than it would with just all cotton. But what I'm saying is there's some responsibility on the hunter to understand how these systems work. And so, part of the reason I like to talk to you is I think it's a great education point. You want to start with the right base layer. If you don't set that foundation correctly, if you're going out there and wearing your cotton T-shirt and your cotton blue jeans under your systems, you're not optimizing your performance. You're not going to have as good an experience as you could if you set yourself up with the proper base layers. And then think about how you're going to commute into the stand. I commute in, for example, with as little of the layers. If I'm wearing my bibs, I typically commit to my bottom. So I'm going to vent the legs on my bibs. I'm going to walk in with maybe just like a lightweight synthetic base layer on, or I'm going to have maybe my Fanatic hoodie if it's really cold outside. I'll deal with a little bit cold on the way in. And then when I get up in the stand, as my body starts to cool, I will add my insulating layers. So, going with a mid-layer lofted insulation jacket, and then, adding on, for example, if it's ultra cold, I'll add my Fanatic jacket on later in that. You don't want to go in and walk several hundred yards wearing that in, or with an incinerator on. You'll spontaneously combust. So, go ahead and take it off, pack it in. I think you'll have a better day.
Yeah, for sure. All that stuff makes sense. And it's funny that that's part of the evolution, I think, of what I'd call just us modern hunters. Just 10 years ago, 12 years ago, you didn't hear about body mapping and packing in clothes like that. And it's just funny, how fast things changes and using synthetic clothing like that. I know, 18 years ago, everything I owned was cotton, what you just said, and it just makes your whole day miserable. And there's nothing worse than being cold 20 minutes into a set after you just, walked roughly 300, 400, 500 yards. It's the worst. And I remember those days vividly. And it's great that we've come so far, into this side of outwear and base layers.
Yeah, I can remember when I was, in high school hunting, and you remember the cotton coveralls you'd wear?
Oh, yeah,
and then I'd look like this.
Around.
I'd look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and I remember, where I was from, getting down into the teens, that was cold in the South, but I can remember barely being able to get through those sits and just looking like a Ralphie from the Christmas Story, and now I've hunted in gear and been fairly sleek and trim and not overbulked, down to negative 20 degrees, and been very, very comfortable. My face might be cold in those conditions, but my core body warmth, I'm very comfortable in those conditions, and I've even been able to wear like a lightweight glove. So I'll take a merino wool liner, put on the Fanatic glove, and then stick those in the hand muff with some artificial heat. And I've been in a great situation to be able to stand those temperatures for very long sits.
Yeah, that's really amazing because, just like you, the cotton stuff and cotton overalls, and I just remember so much bulk, and it's just such a nice feeling now to go out and almost look like you're underdressed because you're not so bulked up. It's crazy to even think about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And then if anybody has any other questions on some of the other updates, just to go into, I know you had asked me to specifically go over this, but on the bibs, one of the things we talked about is trying to make things better. So the original bibs that we had in the Fanatic system, just even with the sound being on the half that audible engagement distance, but the lower leg of the bibs you're going to see actually now have no burr on them. And you talked about mapping. That's really all about burr pickup. So one of the big complaints people had is, I tried to get through, but inadvertently I picked up some bibs or some burrs on my bibs, and then so we were able to take that problem away. So there's nothing that's ultimately burr proof, but they're certainly easy to flick off and take off if you pick them up. I used to take my old ones. For example, I've got 2 young children that are starting to age out of this, but I'd pay them like 10 cents a burr to be able to pluck them out for me, and I wound up going broke. So
that's funny, but it's so true though, especially here in the Midwest, and probably maybe a little less in the West, but especially here in the Midwest. The burrs are horrible, and there's different types of burrs, and each one has a challenge with picking them out. And sometimes you do it in the tree stand just to, like, help pass the time. But between burrs and the wild, I call them like a wild rose bush with thorns on them. I mean, it's just littered in the Midwest, and that's always been a problem, from snagging your pants, burn them up, and that's really a great thought. Just I don't know about you, but I hate to take my clothes and pack them and have burrs on them because I just feel like they're dirty. You know what I mean? And then you're just getting burrs all over your house or your other clothes that you're putting in a scent-tight bag or tote, and it's just never a good situation.
Yeah, and those ones that just break apart into the ultra tiny burr, those are the ones that they're just impossible to get out. So I think that was a really nice update. And now I'm even saving money. You wouldn't believe how many they'd show up in their little plastic bag with all those birds. I'd be like, holy smokes. But that was just self-preservation, I think, right there.
So how did you guys really combat that? Was it just making that Berber tighter, or a different type of fabric altogether?
It's a mapped. So we chose a different textile. It's going to be a smooth face. If you think about where you're going to need Berber, it's in your core body warmth area. So you'll see that. I mean, it's the same textile we're using in the sleeve, so you're going to get a little bit less bulk in that area on your legs, which is great when you're climbing your sticks, getting in and under your stand. And it's a lower bulk textile, but burrs, they've evolved to be what birds. I mean, their whole survival. The way they transfer around is by sticking to things really well. You're not going to solve that. So if they stick on it, the key is just to make them get off easy and pick the key areas. So the front of the legs, inside of the crotch, gusset, for example, and then along the hem of the jacket. All of those areas were the worst problematic burr pickup areas, and now all of those have a smooth textile to be able to pull off. So even like the hem of the jacket, for example, they always seem to wind up like right under the underside, and then they wind up making noise. So they're really easy to pluck off when they stick to that textile.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Is there any other changes that you guys do to the pants as well, Chris, like zipper-wise or inside zippers around the calf or anything like that has changed?
So the zippers are the new quieter zippers. So if you're venting or donning, or if you decide to pack in your bibs, or if you just want to vent because it's the sun came up and you got warm, or you're going in, they're a lot quieter. The suspenders are a lot less bulk up on the front, so we use a different suspender system. Also, one of the changes with all of our bibs is we're no longer using natural rubber. So if you're using an ozone, like a scent crusher or ozonics type system where you're running those in there, one of the things like ozone, it kills natural stuff, things. Yeah. And some of the old elastic that on the shoulder straps would be damaged by those. And so that is something that's been updated, so you can use them in any ozone chamber. If you have actually one that's an old product that actually uses some of the natural rubber, then we can replace those for you. So one of the things we don't want people doing is just throwing their old gear away. That's not something, just from a conservation and what we don't want people this gear is supposed to last a long time. So whether, trading it down to the next person or you're keeping it in your line, we don't want you replacing your gear every year, but you can actually get your suspender sent in or your bib sent in to customer service, and they'll replace the suspender system on there for you, so that's not using the natural rubber if you've damaged yours in the past. That's something we'll take care of for you. And that's just really important to us. That's one of the things we do as a service-oriented thing for our customers.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So the new system, Chris, is it like a synthetic rubber, or is it a totally different material altogether?
Yeah, it's just a synthetic, so it's not going to, it's not natural rubber. So one of the original suspenders that were in some of our bibs had natural rubber component to them, and obviously over the past couple of years, ozone's becoming a really big thing from a scent control standpoint, and we want to make sure our gear stands up for that. So if you've got anything, if anybody's out there and they've damaged their gear, just call Sitka Gear customer service, and they'll help you out. And then just as far as other new products, we've got the new Fanatic pack. This thing, I worked with a guy named Jim Holt Jr. out of Alberta. And I kind of dubbed him the silent fanatic. He's a person that, if he runs you and his outfitting exercise, he won't let you go out in the field if your gear's not quiet. You're actually, even if you booked a hunt with him, he'll say, hey, you can't go out because you're going to mess everything up for other people. And the reason that is his area is just the quietest area I've ever been to from a hunting situation. And so he and I worked together on this development of this pack, laid all the gear out that we needed for that style of hunting. So there's no exposed plastic parts or buckles. So, a lot of us just use the side release buckles on packs. This one actually uses a silent closure system, kind of similar to a MOLLE system. You drop things like a kind of a silent webbing hook that's reinforced through a ported area. And that holds pocket shut, holds the top lid shut. There's a bow carry system on the front. So one of the things I don't like to do is set my pack down on the ground and then pull it up. So you can actually walk up to your tree, pull it up instantly, hang your pack. It's got a dedicated slot for your bow arm. So then you can pull that out, accessible from the outside of the pack. Screw that in, take the bow off the front of your pack, and then hang it up, and then you're ready to go. And then also, if you're carrying antlers during the rut, you'll see two recessed ports that are just in the side, under the side pockets. Those are for the bases of your antlers, for example, as well. So it nests your antlers on the front and outside of the pack, or it has enough volume at 2,200 cubic inches to be able to put them inside.
Yeah, that's a large size pack actually, which is really nice, and just really couple cool features that you just mentioned, obviously. But I mean, I don't know how many times I have packed, like we talked about earlier, Chris, just undoing your outer layer, putting it in, strapping it in your backpack, and it seems like every time, it does not matter, it never fails. Once I undo those buckles, one of those buckles is going to hit something and ting, and it's probably hardly any noise, but it's just enough to drive me nuts. And I know if I hear it, a deer can hear it. So for you guys not to have any exposed, buckle-like systems on that pack, I think is amazing. And the size itself is really cool. I know another feature of that pack, I believe it's that pack, right, that you can kind of condense down while it's hanging in the stand. Is that correct?
Yeah. So a lot of people look at it and you'll kind of take a second take, and usually people take a trip or two to get used to it. And then all of a sudden it becomes their favorite pack from people that I've been able to give it to. And so it's designed without structure on purpose. And the idea behind it, when Jim Holt Jr. and I were going through that, was the fact that it will collapse on itself when you empty it. So you're carrying all your gear in, and then obviously you're taking your jacket out. You're taking all of the stuff that you need out of usually the internal main compartment. And then the idea behind that is that the whole pack caves in on itself, and then rather you having the same 2,200 cubic inches showing in like a true structured pack on the side of your tree, the whole thing's going to collapse in and go to a lower profile.
Yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. It's nice to try to stay nice and tight against that tree and not have any of that excessive outline, bulky outline, so to speak. So that's what a great feature that is. And obviously you talked about the rattling antlers. That's another issue that I think everybody's had, where you walk and they ting or make noise, or when you're pulling the bag up or down, they smack together. So that's another great feature to keep those things nice and tight so they're not making any kind of rattling sounds.
Yeah, one of the requirements Jim had is he likes to carry his inside the pack. So there's just enough volume for most antlers to be able to nest in the bottom of the pack, and then you can stuff everything on top of it, because usually you're going to take everything out, and what's the last thing you're probably going to get out? The antlers.
Right.
So it's everything. I try and think of the order of operations that you're going to go through. So all of the pocket configurations, even the fact that the two smaller pockets, typically most people hang their pack on their right side if they're a right-handed archer or a right-handed hunter. And so the two smaller packs, the pockets on the outside are accessible to you, and then the one larger pocket is further away from you, just because you're more likely to pull something out of those two smaller pockets.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful pack, beautiful system, and it is very true. You know, when you get all done, all that stuff's out of the pack anyways, you know, like you guys mentioned, and that's just well thought out. Usually maybe my snacks are in there that's left, or who knows what else, but usually it's very, very small minimum items like that. So how cool. Wonderful pack. And another thing I noticed about it is the textile on that pack itself. It's super quiet. I mean, the fabric itself is seems to be very durable, and it is ultra quiet.
Yeah, it's the same Berber, the new Berber that we're releasing on the gear. So if you look at it, it's going to be a Berber. It took the idea of kind of like, if you've ever talked to any real, you know, some fanatical whitetail hunters, there's a lot of guys that would take like a little Berber knapsack, for example, and it was just like a terrible design, but they did it because it was quiet. So it took that same concept, but then put it into a real technical pack. And then on the base of it, you're going to see a smooth textile. That's just so if you do set it up down on the ground, it's not going to pick up snow, or it's not going to pick up like burrs or twigs or sticks. So if you do happen to set it down, we did map the textile across the base for that purpose.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know there's like so much to talk about, Chris, and I want to basically invite you to be back on the show and have you on multiple times throughout the year, because I could talk. I love great gear, and I think easily it would take us like 4 hours to cover the whitetail side of stuff. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, there's so much good stuff.
Yeah, it's a fairly complex line, and we realize that, but it's important that, you know, depending on what type of hunting you're doing and what style of application, that we have a system that you can build that's right for you. So, and you know, that's something that I'm more than happy to help people to get an understanding of trying to figure out what system's best for their style of hunting, and then also their body chemistry.
Yeah, for sure. I know we're going to definitely talk more about it, but I mean, from the base layer side to even the new system you guys launched last year that I want to kind of dedicate a show to as well is the early is it, how do you say it, Chris? I'm sorry.
Yeah, early season whitetail, or ESW.
Yeah. ESW.
Yeah.
Early season whitetail system, which I think is really unique, and you know, I think a lot of guys kind of maybe will grimace at that, but which now I get to go to Missouri, you know, September 15th. I'll tell you, it's hot. It's hot that time of year, believe it or not, still, and or early season in Nebraska, and for us whitetail hunters, I mean, it is a dream for that time of year. And like you said, it's just part of the system, and the season changes, and basically your gear does, and that's the way I look at it. So I'm excited as well to talk about those items.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that down the road. That's a great story, and how we validated, you know, even just to give it a high level. So I talked about Jim's. His is up in Alberta, great cold weather. You know, it's where I can get in early November some really cold conditions that you might get where you're from, for example, late season. But part of the validation we did of that was actually in Florida in July. So there's actually a rut on Seminole deer that happens towards the end of July, early August, which a lot of people don't know about. And if you can think about the worst place in the world that you'd ever want to go is South Florida in July to hunt deer. But that's where we went to go validate that. So.
Yeah, that's brutal conditions. I mean, it's so funny to think of how brutal it is when it gets extremely cold, but man, it's brutal to kind of get comfortable and on that side of the scope as well. And if you guys tested it there, that's going to be pretty cool to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on.
Not a problem, Chris. Thanks so much. And I know I'll put this in the show notes, but for those that don't know, just let everybody know, Chris, where they can find Sitka Gear at.
So, I mean, a lot of your local independent retailers, if you go to sitkagear.com and you pull up, you can find your local dealer, obviously, and then, the website will be a great place to get information. So just go there and check it out and see if you want to find a local retailer near you. They'll be listed on the website.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Chris, and looking forward to doing this again with you.
Thank you very much.